name is Kira Rooney. I am a sophomore here at Middletown High School North, and I went to both Navesink and Bayshore. I was recently tasked with a research project in my English class, last week actually, so that is what I brought with me to share with you. No matter who you ask, one thing almost every person in this room, I can guarantee, is uncomfortable with is change. Humans thrive on routine and order, and when a roadblock is presented, many people go into fight or flight, either unwilling or uncomfortable with the idea of change. This is no different for young adolescents, and they arguably have the hardest time facing change. Changes to safe spaces, such as their home or their school, can feel like an attack. Every student, for example, goes through the transition from elementary to middle school. New people, new teachers, new rules, and new expectations. That's enough to set anyone's head spinning. For many kids, this can feel like your world is being ripped out from under you. And often, students have never experienced a major life change like this, and therefore lack the skills and support to properly cope with it. This means that any major school transition in a child's early education runs the risk of severe psychological and academic consequences. There are four main factors why change is harder for children. 1, emotional responses and regulation. Kids are often just learning how to navigate their emotions, so their response is often more immediate and intense. They don't know how to properly express what they're feeling, which makes it more difficult for them to comprehend changes going on around them. 2, understanding and perspective. Unlike adults and older teens, kids lack the life experience to put change into perspective. This can make it harder to understand why change is even happening in the first place, and also makes it harder for them to understand more abstract concepts such as long-term benefits or consequences. 3, coping mechanisms. They can show signs of withdrawal, regression, or start showing behavioral issues such as acting out or not being able to focus, simply because they don't have any other way to cope with what's going on around them. 4, dependency. A lot of kids have their sense of identity and safety revolving around familiarity and their environment and their family and friends, things that are very constant and normal. So when things happen regarding those that involve change, it can often feel like a loss of safety. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that drastic changes to a child's educational environment can have severe negative consequences on mental health and their academic achievement. The most recent example that every single person in the entire world can relate to is COVID-19. A study from the National Library of Medicine was taken to review the increases in anxiety and depression in first-year college students from ages 18 to 20. They found that moderate to severe anxiety increased from 18.1% to 25.3%, just 4 months after the pandemic began. The prevalence of moderate to severe depression increased from 21.5% to 31.7%, over a 10% increase. Now, keep in mind, this data is from university students, ages 18 to 20, who, hopefully by that point in their life, have emotional intelligence, coping mechanisms, perspective, and independence, things that kids lack. Imagine the kids who experienced the same thing during COVID-19, except the difference is the words anxiety and depression likely are not even in their vocabulary. As far as academics, COVID-19 saw the decline of reading and math comprehension across the board, and many students are still behind today, as we know. In 2022, the National Center for Education Statistics conducted a special administration of reading and math tests for age 9 students, and they found that overall, students declined 5 points in reading and 7 points in math. Now, although these don't seem like huge numbers, this is the largest decline in reading comprehension since 1990, and the first ever decline in math. Middletown is no stranger to changes like this. When Port Monmouth Elementary School students were moved to New Monmouth right before the start of the pandemic, no research was conducted after the fact to study how this affected children who were moved. However, if there was public information regarding the transition's effects on its students, we can assume that similar numbers would be shown. I would also like to take a moment to recognize the educators that this also affects. These teachers, support staff, administrators, nurses, paraprofessionals, security guards, cafeteria staff, custodians, and more keep these schools running smoothly. Many of the people who have shaped who I am as a person work in these schools, and I am proud to say that. They provide these kids with not only knowledge, but love, support, community, and preparation for the scary world that we live in. They also had their lives changed by the pandemic, and will have their lives changed if this proposal goes through. Finally, I would like to read the mission statement that everyone can find on the Middletown District website. The Middletown Public School District will collaborate as a unified community to empower each student to achieve their fullest potential by providing an engaging, inclusive, and safe educational environment. The district will responsibly and effectively utilize available resources to promote lifelong learning and responsible citizenship to our students throughout their learning journey. The district will encourage students to develop their imagination and creativity, aspire to greatness, value diverse perspectives, and demonstrate cultural competence as global citizens to prepare for future academic, career, and personal successes. I think, from a personal standpoint, Middletown has done that for me. I feel incredibly lucky to be raised here and to be able to wake up every day and go to public school, because I truly have had a great education in Middletown. I hope that you all consider this as you plan the future for these students so that they can have the same. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Jay Bartlett. I live on Brownstock Road. I'd like to thank the administration and board for hosting this forum tonight. As others in the community have noted, the issues raised in the tentative budget presentation last week are not new in Middletown. With others in this auditorium, I attended several strategic planning sessions dating back to 2019, and following a 2-year-long public discourse in December of 2020, an outside expert hired by the district presented many different planning concepts for what the future of the schools of Middletown might look like, ranging from very low impact approaches to concepts that may involve significantly more change. But the one thing that was made very clear during those meetings 5 years ago is that all of the ideas presented required further analysis and, critically, public input. But now it's 5 years later, and none of that public engagement has happened. Yet the passage of years did not magically erase the need for a fulsome and public strategic planning process. Let me give you an example. As it turns out, Plan A in the tentative budget looks quite a bit similar to what the district's consultant in 2020 termed Concept B, with a reduction from 11 elementary schools to 8, a reduction from 3 middle schools to 2. However, the district's own outside expert at the time said that this plan would require, quote, a significant investment in the remaining facilities and would take many years to implement. For example, at the middle school level, in December of 2020, the expert noted that any plan that resulted in moving from 3 middle schools to 2 would require that both of the remaining middle schools would both need to increase their operating capacity to 1,200 students. So how does that relate to where we are now? By the district's own numbers in the presentation from last week, both Thorne and Thompson have a capacity today for 930 students, or 1,860 students combined. Now, the problem is that middle school enrollment, currently, again, according to the district's own numbers, is currently district-wide 1,989 students. So the Plan A would immediately bring middle school capacity to 107% overnight. But to put 107% capacity in context, the district's own consultant, again from 2020, recommended a utilization rate of not higher than 85%. Now, in fairness, the tentative budget presentation did note the need for expansions to Thorne and to Thompson that would have, according to the presentation, a quote-unquote hopeful completion for the 2026-27 school year. So what does that mean if the district hopes to complete these assumingly complicated construction projects in a year? Where does that leave the nearly 2,000 middle school students now crammed into 2 buildings? And we have not heard anything about the extra funding cost to fund those expansions. While the budget presentation did address, and was just addressed here, the timing of the construction completion to coincide with the paying off of certain district bonded debt, and that debt is not paid off, as we just saw, until 2029. And while I understand that issuing bonds to fund these expansions may no longer require a referendum, as was made clear in the frequently asked questions distributed today, I would venture to guess that issuing bonds through the alternative mechanism, which has to go through the Monmouth County Improvement Authority, explicitly to avoid the approval of Middletown's own voters, that actually might raise a whole other level of governmental approval. And I'd ask what happens if neither the voters approve nor the Improvement Authority approves this transaction. What would happen to the children left in already crowded middle schools? Because this has not been planned, and as we were told many, many times in 2025 years ago that was so necessary, overcrowding in our middle schools will happen on day 1 of Plan A. And it will impact every family in this district, not just those whose elementary schools may be closed, but every single student in this district in grades 7 and below who will eventually attend one of those 2 soon-to-be very crowded middle schools. It seems obvious that any outcome that will impact the future of the Middletown schools should be strategic. It should be fully planned. It should be fully funded. It should have the broad support from the community. And it will take time. None of this is possible before April 30th. As such, I urge the board members to please work to buy that critically important time and find another source for the $4 million to save our schools from closing next year.
I must say, it's a hard act to follow. Good evening. My name is Peggy Barker. I am the grandmother of 4 children in Middletown School District. I have worked over 30 years in middle school as a teacher, administrator, assistant superintendent. In addition, I have served on the New Jersey State Board of Education. I believe my experience as a middle school educator gives me a unique perspective on the middle school student. As other speakers have alluded to, closing one middle school impacts all Middletown students. Overcrowding in a middle school has multiple detrimental effects on these students at a most vulnerable age. In addition to the learning loss that overcrowded classes will cause, and the rise in bullying and aggressive behavior resulting from changing classes in ridiculously overcrowded hallways, many other valuable opportunities would be taken from these adolescents at an age where they are dealing with multiple stressors. As it is now, at one middle school, over 120 students have tried out for baseball. Multiply that across the whole spectrum of students who wish to get involved in extracurricular activities, and it's an important outlet for many students at this age and at this time in our current society. Think of all those youngsters who participate in activities like band, newspaper, school plays, and athletics, just to name a few, whose ability to join will be severely compromised when one middle school is closed. These activities afford youngsters the opportunity to get together with others in safe settings. It provides productive time away from social media, and for those who are sometimes academically challenged, an opportunity to thrive and excel. Not all, but many students' mental health depends on having these wholesome outlets beyond academics, to be other like-minded students, to be part of something larger than themselves, such as school play, newspaper, sports team. As it is difficult for many of them to have these outlets because of overcrowding, and this plan would exacerbate an already difficult situation. And what is worse, if this board votes for it, it would be caused not by events outside our control, but by those very individuals who are elected to keep our children safe and well educated.
Marie Los Ramos, you know where I live. You know, obviously, Jackie, you've had somebody follow me home. Yeah, you did. You sure did. You had a henchman follow me home from Harmony Elementary School. You could look the other way because you don't deserve to look at me. You don't deserve it. And where's Bruce, our wonderful lawyer? Where is he? Is he around? He's not around. He got fired. Did he tell you the truth about that? He walked in and his bags were back. But now he's open. He's opened his own firm now. Where's that money coming from? From the kids? And you could smirk, Jackie, all you want and go rub elbows with whoever you want to rub elbows with. But this is not over. It's not over. And let me know where you got your exemption.
My name is Carrie Christensen, and I am here on behalf of the Save Middletown School Missions, along with hundreds of parents in this community. We are here to fight for the education, myself, my children who attend Navesink Elementary, but most importantly, for every single student in the Middletown district. Last week, I stood before you, angered at the lack of transparency that has been shown throughout this process, and upset at the poorly thought out plan to address the funding problem that has been known by this administration for years. Last week, many members here stated you were unaware of the plans that were put in front of us just 2 hours prior. However, in 2023, it was stated by one of the sitting board members, the strategic plan gets updated every 5 years, not every year, she said. Next, in January 2025, there are 6 goals on that strategic plan, and only one involves facilities and talk of redistricting. But I will agree that we have to do something. What has been done to address this problem since 2023? As I mentioned the last time I stood in front of you, and I would be remiss not to address it again, why during meetings with parents that you solicited for a strategic planning discussion was the plan to close schools never addressed? Over the past week, my anger has turned into inspiration. I am inspired to see our community, not just Navesink, Leonardo, and Bayshore, but the Middletown community at large, come together to demand a better path forward. We demand a seat at the table. I recently read an article where it was stated, we're at the point now where if we keep just plugging a hole for the year, we're going to have the same problem next year again. If we don't take action that's meaningful for the whole district, this is just going to continue. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on this. We cannot simply place a Band-Aid on a budget to keep our schools open and then do nothing. We must join together to find a way to first save our schools and then create a better path forward that works for all of Middletown. I ask that you seriously consider working with us to find the last Band-Aid that we need to keep these schools open, and then immediately reopen a proper strategic plan that involves the community voices. I have been blown away by so many of the community members who have stepped up this past week to help develop a plan for a better path forward. We ask you that you allow us the opportunity to help you help our community.
Board members, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Rob Galatelli, and I've lived in Middletown and worked as a special education teacher and coach at Bayshore Middle School for over 25 years. This is undoubtedly the best teaching staff from top to bottom that I've encountered in my 25 years at Bayshore. I might be biased, but I truly believe that Bayshore has been the best of the 3 middle schools in the district. Or maybe you should ask some of the former Thompson and Thorne students who are currently working at Bayshore as teachers. Unfortunately, many of them will lose their job if your horrific plan goes through. Dr. Alphonse said it best, and I quote, "We are the ones who make our schools true communities where our students feel loved and thrive." There is no better example of this than Bayshore Middle School. But due to the past mismanagement of funding, it means that we're going to become your sacrificial lambs. This $14 million shortfall didn't occur overnight, but somehow, some way, it just came to light. How and why some of you are even allowed to sit up there and decide our fate is beyond me. You're the supposed brain trust of this community. Figure it out.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Dowell. I've got a first grader at Navesink. I've got a sixth grader at Bayshore, and proud to be here with all these parents. I think it's safe to say that you got our attention. There's a lot of folks that are going to be making some points that I hope everyone listens tonight. The parent community has been working very hard to understand the budget, to understand the challenges associated with the budget so that we can be conversant with you. Working very hard to understand the impact that Plan A would have on our children, but all the children in Middletown, so that we can talk with you about that. We walked through Plan A, and while I know that hard work was put into it, it's based on incomplete and poor analysis. And we're going to hear about that too. The first phase, $4 million in savings, it takes a couple $100,000 per year to keep the lights on in an elementary school. 93% of the operating costs are people. Closing buildings does not save money. And then notably absent from what we saw with Plan A last week was, how much do we think it's going to cost to retrofit Bayshore? Should we count the zeros? And does anybody in this room think that that work can be completed in 2.5 months before school starts in September? And then when we talk about the bookend, the promise, the supposedly glittering secondary schools, if we just take our medicine now. My neighbor, Mr. Bartlett, talked about that. I'm not sure the community would be in much mood for a referendum if Plan A comes to pass. And the alternative method, that's just a different way to reach into our pockets, again, after the community is on fire if Plan A passes. But I want to talk about a bigger theme that's going to explain some of the feelings, some of the intensity associated with tonight, and especially associated with last week. It speaks to a lack of process, proper process. We heard, and I was sitting next to people watching that last board meeting in December of 2020 that addressed the close of that strategic planning phase. And the consultants, the board, and the superintendent looked into that screen and confirmed that those plans were at the starting line. That's a quote, the starting line. And they reassured the entire community that before anything happened, even a minor change, much less something major like we are talking about, that it would involve years of data collection and years of conversation with the community. And as we'll hear, we've had people at the strategic planning meeting since, and we've confirmed that the notion of school closings or redistricting, it never came up. That board in December 2020 put down the baton and invited the next strategic planning committee to take it on. And now we know what happened. A new superintendent came in 2022 and picked up that baton and walked into her office and became a strategic planning committee of one. That door should have remained open. The public should have been part of that process. The first notice that these communities received about this incredible damaging change to our villages, to all of Middletown, it's 3 years too late. We should have been involved from the start. And it pains me to say it. I know the board, you are unpaid public servants and you have day jobs. You depend on your administration. But this was a fundamental breach of the public trust. There is a reason that parents are upset. And I just heard the phrase, the greater good, which, that sounds a lot like bureaucratic social engineering. That I know better than you do. That I know better than parents who should be deciding what is right for their communities, their schools, and their children. And so really, the question is, where do we go from here? There's door one and there's door two. Door one would have the board adopting a budget that includes Plan A. And Middletown would tear in half for the next 10 years arguing about all that it implicates. Door two is passing a budget through crook or craw, and we may have gotten a gift from the state earlier this week, that does not involve closing schools or redistricting without any community input whatsoever. Door two makes sense for this cycle. And now that you have our attention, the promise from the community is that if everybody up in this front row, it's your opinion that we do need to get started on some serious conversations because we do have a systemic budget problem. We are ready to roll up our sleeves and have that conversation, I would say on May 1st, but we'd like maybe a couple of weeks off. Let's go through door two, and that will help restate. We need to repair the trust. The trust is broken right now. And if we get through this budget cycle, all this energy, the rage will dissipate, and it will turn into something productive. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carmen Severies. I am a senior here at Middletown High School North. I attended Port Monmouth Elementary School for kindergarten, which, as we know, recently closed. I then moved on to Bayview, and I went to Bayshore for middle school. Currently, my brother is a 6th grader at Bayshore, and his descriptions of how the teachers are reacting to the situation is, quite frankly, very sad, very depressing. Teachers have been crying, they have been upset, they have been so rocked by the news because you didn't give them any warning that you were thinking about closing the schools. You let them find out with everyone in this room that they may be losing their job in a couple months. Some of the best teachers I have ever had have come from Bayshore Middle School. They supported me. They made sure emotionally I was okay. They helped me learn through the pandemic. They were so detrimental to my formative middle school years that I cannot imagine how some of these children are going to get through their life in middle school without them. Additionally, I want to point out how much possibly renovating these schools is going to affect students, because they are not going to be able to renovate the middle schools in time for the next school year. Students are going to be learning during construction. They are going to be distracted by the noises of heavy machinery, of hammering of nails. I personally have ADHD, and I know that if I was trying to learn to get a quality education through all of this noise, it would be nearly impossible. I would not know where to even focus my attention. I can barely focus my attention when it is silent. How are they going to learn? How are they going to be able to get what they need? How are they going to think 2 + 2 = 4? This is going to destroy their foundations. My foundation during COVID was destroyed. I know that even though I am smart, I would be so much smarter if I had not been disrupted like I had in those 2 years. Now they are going to be disrupted, moving to a different school, learning during construction, learning with new people around them, with new teachers around them. And it is just going to completely destroy all of their foundations. I would also like to point out some of the budgeting. Earlier this year, North received a new football field. I would like to ask where the money for that football field came from. Because if we are $10 million in the hole, then I feel as though there are definitely more important things we should be focusing on than a football field. Our track was recently replaced, which is also very costly. Where are we getting the funding for sports and for all of these things when we don't have the money to keep schools open, when we don't have money to fund the arts? I am an art student who ran out of paint in her classroom. I had to bring my own in from home, which I am fine with, but it was white paint. It is something that should have been easily accessible to me. We need to focus on this more instead of helping sports, instead of helping all of these other things who have been funded with large amounts of money for large amounts of time. I just want people to think about how much we've been spending, about what we've been spending it on. I want us to think about our teachers, about how this is going to upend their lives. And I want us to think about our students and about their mental toll and about them being split up from their friends. Because I was devastated being split up from my friends when some of us went to North and some of us went to South. And the same thing is going to happen, but earlier, for these students who are being split up in middle school. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Alphonse, Scott Peterson, my daughter Julia spoke before. And can we just have another round of applause for these children? What eloquent speakers they were, a product of Middletown education. I'm also a product of Middletown education, with Ocean Avenue, Thorne, Middletown North, Brookdale, Monmouth University, law school. And Dr. Alphone started this evening apologizing to us. Why did she do that? Because they were trying to hide this from us, right? I mean, that's what was going on. Now we're here to ask you to be transparent. Okay? Now, I'm in charge of, or I've been appointed to the Legal and Process Committee, and it's all I've been doing for the last week. Partners in my law firm are probably going to be pretty upset to hear that. So we're asking you to be transparent. We're digging into, there's parents, there's a lot of attorneys in this town that are working with me. There's a lot of non-attorneys that have great ideas that are working with me, and we're uncovering things that we don't think is legal. We're digging into the administrative code regarding the approval of closing schools. We're digging into your own policy regarding closing schools and whether you followed that or not. It doesn't look like you did. And we don't want to increase the cost to this district of litigation. We've been there, done that. We don't want to do it again, right? So my team put together all these questions for me to ask, and I don't know if anyone else here is going to come up and ask them, and we're looking into the LRFP, the Long Range Facilities Plan. We're digging into all of these things. That's kind of a labyrinth in this school code, foreign to me, but I'm learning it as I go. I'm learning more and more every day. We're looking into the magical $8.3 million that was found, that was communicated to us when the PTA boards were meeting at 1 o'clock with Dr. Alphone. Was that strategic? I don't know. Be transparent. Answer our questions and be transparent. The one big thing that we've found out, and this was from a non-parent, okay? A lot of the ideas we're getting are not a non-parent, sorry, from a non-attorney. We're getting a lot of good ideas from non-attorneys. It's amazing. We're getting a lot of good ideas from children. We really are. My daughter is going to be a better attorney than I am one day. One of the things we've found is the Open Public Meetings Act. All right. And regarding the executive session of the Board of Education of April 8th of 2025, that was stated in Dr. Alphone's March 21st, 2025 letter. And I wish Mr. Padula was here so we could have a conversation with him about this, because again, we don't want to have to bring litigation. We don't want to have to increase the cost. So the Open Public Meetings Act says that all Board of Education meetings must be open to the public, except any portions of a meeting that address a limited number of exceptional topics. In our view, in our committee's view, none of these exceptions would apply to the stated purpose of the meeting, which, Dr. Alphone, you wrote it in your letter, okay? And I'll quote you, discuss the feedback from the community, okay? That was stated in your letter. Discuss the feedback from the community in front of all of us so we know what's going on. We're here to save our schools. By not being transparent, you've created this monster, this turnout of parents that are really upset because you didn't involve us in the process. That's what we want. We want to be involved in the process, and we don't want April 30th hanging over our heads.
Hello everyone, my name is Gosia, and I just wanted to remind everyone why we are here. We are here because we are adults, and because we are parents, and we have an obligation. We have an obligation to provide stable platform for our kids to learn, to grow, and to develop. That's the basic line. So if anyone got a chance to watch a TV yesterday interview with the Governor Murphy, you could see that the main two factors that affect closure of schools are capacity and basically the local share, fair local share. So let's look at the capacity. There is many discrepancies how research that was purchased and ordered by our Board of Education perceives capacity. They look at different aspects. For example, self-contained special ed rooms. They look at different Title I versus non-Title I schools. They look at how many kids are allowed in kindergarten versus fifth grade. They don't look purely at the square footage of a school. It's not a movie theater that you can pack a lot of people in and hope for the best. So, based on those numbers, current utilization rate runs above 90%, which is a huge discrepancy to what Board of Education provided, which is above 60. So based on that fact, we have no issue with capacity. We shouldn't be closing schools. Instead, we should find ways to build new ones. And I do agree with everyone. We haven't built a new school in Middletown in the past 60 years, okay? We managed to build a new municipal building just recently. Guess how much it cost? It costed around $60 million. So, can we find money, do funding? We have some bonds rolling up soon. Can we issue new municipal bonds and actually invest into our kids? If we create extra capacity, then we can think about maybe closing some schools and then moving kids to better facilities. It will happen at some point. It cannot exist forever. But few issues. To operate buildings, like someone said, doesn't cost much. And actually, all the PTAs in involved schools are doing amazing job to improve life for our students. Now let's move to the fair share. So, as many of you know, inflation has been running hard, and it's still quite around 3% right now. But a few years ago, it was running as high as 9%. And it's not just US phenomenon, actually it's a world phenomenon. It had to do with COVID and a lot of other issues, but we still have inflation. And if we do get tariffs, which, remember, Liberation Day is coming on April 2nd, if anyone is following, the prices most likely will go up. So, on that point, with inflation running above 3, way above 3, we have been putting not enough money into our district as residents of that town. So 2% is not enough to support our schools. And you can look on a slide, which is the point 2. There was a study done in 2020, assuming 2% tax rebate, we would have done, they assumed we're gonna run out of the money, and they were right. We are in 2025, and we have a 10 million deficit. So the plan B is to raise tax rebate, which that's what we have to do. We have to chip in, but all people have to be involved, and there will be some people not happy. It's normal. Some people will be happy, some people, you're never gonna make everyone happy. So what is the proposed tax increase? Remember, 4.88 was already voted. Now we're looking at additional 5.2, but really that number 4.88 and 5.2 that makes 10.1 actually is 6.2 of your overall tax. Okay. So now what I'm asking the board and people involved, we need to deliver a budget more efficient, more productive, more focused on our end user. And who is our end user? Kids. That's the most important.
My name is Dan Lazan. I have a third grader at Leonardo and a first grader and a third grader at Navesink. I'm impacted by both closures. I'm not going to spend my time at this podium talking. I'm going to hand out what thousands of hours of this community has put together in the research of the misspent budgets and bad tax raises over the past years have put us in this position. So I'm going to put the mic down, I'm going to bring a copy to each of you. Please look at it, please read it. Get involved in the community.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Talia Bauer. I'm here on behalf of the Save Middletown Schools mission to fight for the education of all children in the Middletown district. I myself have 2 small children who are slated to attend Navesink Elementary in the future, but I currently do not have students in any of the affected schools. I come to you all as a licensed professional counselor. I've worked in the field of mental health, primarily with students and families for over 10 years. I come here to discuss what we often think of as the black sheep in a room, mental health. I looked online, I did the research, we've all seen it, we all know. Multiple studies across the board show that school closures, primarily abrupt school closures, lead to heightened anxiety, stress, and confusion among children. According to one study, sudden changes in routine, loss of social support, and the absence of a structured environment are key stressors. You heard firsthand today from multiple students how they were affected during the pandemic and how they continue to be affected today. We've seen over time since the pandemic a substantial increase in anxiety, depression, and loneliness rates, primarily in elementary, middle, and high school students. When schools close unexpectedly, students are not only losing their academic environment, but also vital emotional and social support networks. I currently work as the Director of Therapeutic Services in a private neuropsychology practice in the local area. I've worked with probably hundreds of students from Middletown, preschool to high school. These students were already navigating post-pandemic obstacles, social isolation, distance learning. Those years of disconnect impacted them significantly. They now have an inability to read and understand social cues. They have a fear of detaching from their parents or leaving the home in general. And they have no ability or lack of ability to manage stress and anxiety the way that they used to. Adding this threat, this lingering threat of school closures, compounds that trauma for many of these individuals, students and staff alike. We often see that this increase in anxiety presents itself in multiple ways in children and students. That includes behavioral disruptions in the classroom, decreased academic performance, and an increase in overall resources that are needed to now support those students. Additionally, by creating this outlandish proposal, you continue to contribute to a student's sense of learned helplessness. For those that don't know, learned helplessness is a psychological phenomenon where an individual, after repeatedly facing uncontrollable, stressful situations, eventually stops trying to change their circumstance, even when they have the ability to do so, because they've learned that they are helpless. Many of our students already feel lost, unheard, and devalued. Imagine what that would look like for these students if you now close these schools. The biggest issue that I personally see in my profession is bullying, and as many of these students have mentioned before, it is prominent. There's often a lack of awareness from our staff, not due to a lack of caring, but because there's a lack of ability to keep track when these class sizes are so large of the bullying incidents taking place in the classroom, in the hallway, in the gym, in the cafeteria. Students have also verbalized to me consistent inability to access the counseling departments in their schools because the counselors are stretched thin. I know many of these counselors, they are incredible people, but they can only do so much with what they have. We also know that when schools are overcrowded, it becomes much easier for inappropriate behavior to pass under the radar. Vaping in the bathrooms, inappropriate relationships with staff, unknown acts of self-harm that are taking place within the walls of the school, frequent physical fighting, and sneaking substances into schools are just some small examples of what I hear about regularly. We've already lost multiple students in this town to suicide. We've seen instances of substance use in the school buildings, and we know that the fighting and bullying is taking place. If we already have these issues, as most towns do, how will we address them when we have less staff, less facilities, and larger populations of children? How will the guidance department be able to see every single student that needs support? How will the teachers be able to identify and evaluate each individual student in a more effective way? Speaking of those evaluations, I'll end on this point. In my current role, I complete intakes for families that are coming in seeking evaluations for their children. I've spoken to hundreds of parents who have shared with me that their child was either not identified or not seen or not known as having cognitive deficits or learning disabilities. Those parents are then going to the school and asking for help and being denied. They are told that they have to pay out of pocket or find private neuropsychological evaluation. Explain to me how a family that might not be able to afford that would be able to do so. Also, those wait lists are 6 to 9 months on average. How is a child who's actively suicidal, anxious, depressed, or struggling with an unidentified learning disability expected to wait 6 months to receive help? Unlike many other people who will speak today, I cannot speak on statistics and percentages. Mental health is not a numbers game. It is a matter of having our children feel safe, feel seen, and be heard. I would hope that all of you take this information that everyone has provided with its truest weight and make a better choice. These children deserve it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laura Ballard on 187 Monmouth Avenue. You have to give me a minute. I left my reading glasses in my purse and we weren't allowed to bring purses in here, so I wouldn't get doing this. It was a hard week for all, right? Teachers, parents, educators, administrators, Board of Ed. I know not a lot of sleep we've had over the last week, a lot of emails, a lot of struggles. I just want to hold space for everybody's had that shared experience here. I want to give a shout out to, I've heard from so many teachers, I've reached out, children care, right? My kids are asking, what's going to happen to Miss Silvestri? What's going to happen to Miss Moyer? What about Mr. Martino? What about Miss Tischler? What about Miss Doggy? What about Mr. Cohen? Our kids are worried about their teachers because their teachers are their safe space. We're talking about trauma. We're not talking about the wars that are going on in other countries. We're not talking about fire and devastation and what we call in my classroom level 5 behavior. What we're talking about is that felt sense of safety that's in the nervous system. And all of us, regardless of your position, whether you're a teacher or a parent, educator, administrator, we have all shared that experience in different ways this week. This is gonna really age me, but if y'all ever watched Mr. Rogers growing up, what Mr. Rogers said was, when really bad things happen, you wanna look for the helpers. And man, our teachers have been helpers. Our community has been helping each other. I'm by nature an introvert. I've met some wonderful people and made some wonderful connections. And I'm sure with the Board of Ed and admin, you sort of connected through a lot of hostility coming at you from the last week, which is a way to build connection as well. So it is. And I'm trying to teach my children that there are those things that you should look for, those glimmers and ways to connect and come together in a productive way. Good things can come from adversity when properly equipped and prepared for those transitions and change. I'd like to hold space for the complexity of the problem. It is real. We need to hold space for the significance of the budget issues. There's declining enrollment, there's inflation, there are repairs, there are increased costs for special education students that tend to be increasing every year. This problem is not going away and the numbers are very real. I think we need to acknowledge that as a community in order to move forward. And it's almost like last week, for those of y'all that were there, it was almost like the numbers were trying to fight the humans behind the numbers, and they're really talking about different things, right? So from the parent perspective, we have what we're losing, what we're grieving right now is that connection, that sense of community, the fear of losing those things that we hold so dear, that's created a lot of mental health issues. But what I'm noticing here is that it's almost, I'm getting the feeling that it's an us versus them mentality. And I really don't think that's the way we're going to be able to move forward. I mean this genuinely, we do have a problem with our budget that needs to be worked on. And this was not the way to communicate that to teachers, to
They keep pushing the button.
I'd like to go to two of my girls that dropped their microphone and walked out, but unfortunately it's working, so I can't do that. But I want to acknowledge that that's where we are right now, that we have this sort of us versus them mentality. And I think that there's a real opportunity here. There's an opportunity for us, for those of us in the community that have been starting to work together, stranger next to stranger, and becoming friends over a shared struggle that we're having. I think we can extend that hand to the Board of Ed and to Dr. Alphone and to the administrators here, and let's say we've got a real problem. We do, we can't avoid it. It's going to be continuing throughout the next several years. But this is not the way you transition kids, okay? I want to hold space for that. When we were growing up, it was a suck it up mentality, right? You fell on the ground in the playground, suck it up, right? You don't get that. It's not like that anymore because our kids have social pressures from technology, social media. I can't even name all of them to be able to talk about them, but we got to start ours at 3 o'clock and theirs continues even through it into the night. It never goes away, which is why we can't treat mental health in a suck it up mentality. This will make you stronger. This does have the possibility of making our young people stronger if planned well and transitioned well with a plan. I would like to beg you, Board of Ed members, Dr. Alphone, administrators, anybody with a vote in this. I'm not saying don't ever do this. I am asking you, let's give this a transition year. We can do many things to support our kids with this. We can create a new mascot that would be with new colors, and then you could have the art club go, and they could compete over what the mascot would be. And then you could have virtual sessions between classes across buildings during the advisory periods with trivia or something, because kids were awkward and can't do it on their own. But there's so many things. We have people in here from the PTOs that are just, they work miracles with that money. And if we knew in advance, we would be doing things like that. Not me, I'm not good at that stuff, but the people that are would be killing it. So I know what was mentioned in the meeting on last Tuesday was that Dr. Alphone had to really band-aid last year's budget with a lot of cuts to be able to get to the point that we could even extend through this year. Respectfully, that was the time to communicate that there may need to be a closure for the 24-25 years so that we have this year to plan. Right? So I'm begging those that have a vote in this, now is not the time. I'd really like to be a part of the change that you wish to see when we have community involvement. I know a lot about mental health and mindfulness training. I'd love to be a part of a 10-month plan that we can really properly transition our students and our staff and actually do this in a way that could grow their brains and they could be a part of this and actually get stronger from this. That's not what we gave them the opportunity to last Tuesday, where they came home devastated that their teachers were going to get fired and their felt sense of safety was ripped from them. That wasn't available, but it's not too late. I'm not suggesting don't close. I'm asking to do this right. Let's do right by kids. Let's reach across the aisle. I feel like I'm a politician now, but it's not about, I'll go over there, I'll shake your, I want to work together to get to a point we can get through the next school year, as many Band-Aids as are needed. Let's do it. Let's freaking do it. And then let's decide how to transition kids in a productive way.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Mack. I am a parent of 2 students at Leonardo Grade School, and a third that should be entering Leonardo next year. She'll actually be 4 on her first day of school. So imagine a 4-year-old going into Bayshore. It's a little scary. Hello, Dr. Alphone. How are you? I'm going to be nice, don't worry. I can appreciate the difficult task that's been put in front of you, and I understand that in these situations, it's nearly impossible to come up with a solution that pleases everyone. Your vision for a reimagined Middletown is a noble endeavor, but candidly, I think it's severely flawed. Plan A should almost never be to close schools. The adverse impact of doing so is not only felt on the children directly and their families, but it's also those indirectly impacted. If the schools were in a state of decay, then sure, I get it. If the schools were underperforming, then sure, I get it. If the schools were empty, yeah, I get it. If there was no other way, yeah, I get it. But these schools, while old, they're in decent shape, right? The students in these schools, they're performing exceptionally well. Exceptionally well. The schools are being utilized, and there is another way. So the reality is that most school districts are struggling. I think we all agree. We hear it in the news. Right? It's no secret. And many other districts have taken the easy way out and closed schools, thinking that it would make things right again. But there's been countless studies that have shown that this isn't true. Closing schools does not end up saving money unless other drastic measures are taken. Right? So closing schools does not improve academic performance. Closing schools does not make life better for the students affected, both in the classroom and at home. Every person in this forum knows that bigger isn't always better. Closing schools and redistricting students is really nothing more than a Ponzi scheme, if you think about it. Closing schools and pushing our children to other schools that are already overcrowded isn't a viable solution. It's like force-feeding a goose to make foie gras, right? Maybe perceived as a luxury, but in my opinion, it doesn't actually taste very good. So, Dr. Alphone, I urge you and the board to find a plan that allows us to keep our schools open and our children happy. I urge you to find a solution that provides the runway and time that we need to work together to develop a collaborative community plan that's truly about providing the absolute best path forward for our children and our community. I urge you to find a solution that unites our town, not tears it apart. Right? That's the Middletown that we'd all like to imagine. So if you guys could look at this room, look around, you've been able to unite us in an amazing way. You've been able to get neighbors who were strangers to become neighbors who are now friends. Where am I? All right, you've been able to get our community to band together to solve difficult problems. But I think most importantly, you've awoken a sleeping giant that's now paying attention to what's really happening in our town, right? And this is a town that we love, and for many of us, we chose to live in because of the very schools you want to close. And while it might sound strange, I want to close by thanking all of you. Thank you for bringing all of us together to reimagine a Middletown that we want to live in. And my only hope is that we can reimagine it with you, with the board, with the township committee, and with all the residents of Middletown, right? And that can't be done in a few weeks.
Hi, I'm April Rose. I'm gonna come in the front because I'm little. I don't think you'll see me. I spoke at the last meeting. I think I asked you guys to stand. I'm not gonna have you stand today. But I did that because the last meeting, the energy was kind of negative. It was stale, it was thick, right? It was kind of thick energy if you actually got into the room. And I'm glad that today's energy is definitely different. It's a little bit more inspiring and energizing. Do you agree? Yeah? No? Hello? Do you agree? Yes? I think it's a little bit different here. If you can't tell, I'm also one of the Middletown Eagles cheerleaders, cheerleading coaches. I'm not cheerleaders, I'm not a cheerleader, but I'm one of the coaches. Anyway, so I'm here today because I spoke to one of my forensic accountants, and he told me that labor, rent, and insurance are the biggest cost for any business, right? Including a school. So let's take out the rent, because it's schools. So let's focus on labor and insurance. So with all of our insurance claims, legal settlements, the HIB cases, the drug issues in the schools, and we continue to focus on the labor and the issues when we present new plans to you, okay? So I feel like if we present the plans and we think about these issues, the labor and the insurance, which are very huge issues, when we go through all the numbers, I think that we may come up with a fantastic solution, okay? I'm not really big into I'm big into legal and contract and stuff like that because I am a realtor, but I also once owned my own business too before I was a realtor. But because I mentioned the realtor thing, just to let everybody know, we have closed in Middletown alone, we have closed over 60 homes since January of 2025, just in Middletown, which is good. Yes, let's give it a, everyone's saying that, things are going down, it's not going down. We are currently under contract on 50 homes just in Middletown, pending, currently under contract, which can close at any moment. Okay, so that's also good. There's more people coming in, people going out, so it's constantly rotating. There's more people coming in. And we don't know if these people are going to have children, so saying that the numbers are going down, you can't really say that, because you don't really know. You don't know who's coming in. You don't know if they're coming in with a family of 5, like my family. My family I'm actually a family of 7, and if you include the little dog, then, it's a family of 8. So, again, a mother of a 2nd grader who is at Leonardo, a stepmother to an 8th grader at Bayshore, stepmother to 2 high schoolers, one that's a 9th grade and one that is a senior, and a stepmother to an alumni who graduated last year at North. 2 out of the 5 are on the autism spectrum, and I'll be honest with you, my whole entire family had a terrifying scare this past weekend, one that I wish no parent in this home ever has to experience. where my eldest stepdaughter disappeared on Saturday evening, and we could not locate her. She was missing for 32 hours, and it was beyond scary. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to end it with this, that I am beyond thankful for the Middletown police and for everybody in this room and the Middletown community, because we can come together, and because you all did, and help in finding my eldest stepdaughter after 32 hours. So thank you very much. Thank you, Middletown Police, and thank you, the Middletown community, for sharing our post over 275 times. And I'm very, very thankful because she is a very bright young woman who's going to college next year. So thank you. I know that we can unify together and we can make this come together. And I hope that nobody has to go through what my family went through. And I know that we can make this happen and we can come together for a solution, a positive one. Okay?
Hi everybody, thank you. My name is Drew Train. I have two in Navesink and, two in Bayshore, one in Navesink. And I just want to thank all the parents who have spent a lot more time than I over the last couple of days pulling together really useful information and coming here to present it in a very cogent way that I hope the board engages with. I have been an advocate for the last 15 years with the National Alliance for Mental Illness in New York. I'm not a mental health professional, but one of the things that I've learned over that time is that mental illnesses and mental health problems present themselves a lot faster than they resolve themselves. And last week you presented us all with a mental health crisis that is going to persist from today all the way through the resolution and beyond. The mental health crisis is present day. And I know we have a lot of planning to do, and I know we have a lot of collaboration to do, and a lot of discussion about the long-term future of our district, but behavioral problems are probably presenting themselves already in the schools. I'm sure teachers and faculty are dealing with questions and concerns and fear for students, and even if we can put a temporary Band-Aid on it with the tax levy or with another proposal, we're going to have an entire year of increasing demand for mental health services in all of the schools across the district. And even if we have a successful resolution to the budget scenario next year, which doesn't involve closing schools, those issues are going to persist, and we need to be including in our planning immediate short-term mental health support for the school district, for the kids, and an increase in next year's efforts and attention to this issue, because the demand is only going to go up in the immediate term before we have solutions that are going to resolve long-term structural issues. And I just wanted to put that on the table and make sure that you all are thinking about what's happening for the rest of this school year to address these kids and make sure that they're not going into the summer freaked out about what next year's going to be like. And that next year teachers are prepared to address questions from students, address these concerns, and have thoughtful conversations about the resources needed to keep kids on track while we figure our shit out. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Rafferty. My daughter is a kindergartner at Leonardo Preschool. I'll be really quick and I'm trying to speak, so I have nothing written. It's coming from the heart. When we went back to school night, my first ever as a kindergarten parent, very excited. I won't forget the teacher saying that kindergarten, to expect great things the first working period, and the second one will go down because the skills get harder. My daughter did not have all S's her first working period. It was all needs improvement or inconsistent. Being told at back to school night to expect great, like a pretty decent report card for a kindergartner, and mine did not come to that with that, was heartbreaking. Because in my head, well, where are we going from here? If I was told to expect satisfactory from those things, and my kid is not, how do we go up? Thankfully, she did improve, and this next working period was much better. My point being, though, she started school, and it took her to almost March to get grades up for her, and she's in kindergarten. She went to preschool. It wasn't her first school experience. She has schooling experience. She's been in classes with other kids. She knows expectations. She knows rules. She struggles academically. which is fine because every kid does. But my kid in kindergarten, her first marking period had inconsistency, and it took her till March to get some satisfactory and still some needs improvement. So my concern would be that I want you all to know is if she's going to switch schools again, and yes, I get she's 5, but again, started a new school and it took till March. At 5 in kindergarten, started a new school again, and the possibility of starting a new school again and having to adjust concerns me as a parent for my daughter. The other thing I just really want to quickly say is everyone keeps saying, we imagine Middletown. I'm listening to all of you, and from my experience, I went to Middletown, Thompson South. I'm a Middletown alum. My parents, Fairview, Bayshore, South, both Middletown alum. A bunch of you are Middletown alum. So clearly we all like Middletown because we keep coming back. Our parents did, we did, our kids did. Middletown's fine the way it is for the most part. Not perfect, but good enough that we keep coming back. So maybe not reimagine in the sense that everything needs to be changed, but I think maybe upgrade would be better to fit the growing community.
First PSA, if you have a postcard, please leave it with one of the volunteers in the back. We will get it to where it's going. Secondly, I will say I spoke at the last meeting and I asked you what you were going to do after you left that room, and I didn't get an answer. It wasn't meant to be a trick question, but nobody answered, and worse, I don't think anyone thought it was their responsibility to answer after proposing a plan that was meant to get community feedback for the first time on short notice. Now I'm not going to ask you that question. I'm going to tell you what my expectation is. My expectation is that now that you've heard not only the rage at the first meeting, but a lot of well thought out feedback, valid feedback from the families in this town, from the community, I expect to see your plan and your progress. There are several community sessions that are planned. This was a lot more detail than we got the first time. Now we need to hear how you are developing your next steps to keep our schools open for the next school year and help solve a long-term plan in partnership with the community. And if you have an answer now, we're willing to hear it.
Thank you. My name is Dennis Doyle. I live in Navesink. I have a 4th grader, 1st grader, a eventual soon-to-be kindergartner, and if my wife passes her way, maybe even more in the pathway. So we'll see. So I'm incentivized. I do think that obviously there's been some amazing work that's been done by the community, by all those who have looked at the numbers, who have pushed back on some of the assumptions, either unintentionally or intentionally misrepresented. But I also want to speak to some of the points that have come up more recently around those who don't have children in the school system, or have passed, or where this is not as strongly an issue for any of them because it doesn't immediately affect them. I think the two most important things to point out is that one, the taxes aren't going up 10%. That's not we can get into the minutiae of what is really happening, but it's not that. And so the scare tactic of that needs to be nuanced with the reality of the second point, which is that the property values greatly depend on these schools being open, on the value of the education that bring people to the area, that people spend money on their homes, that all the people who are on fixed pensions have a value in their home that has gone up significantly over the lifetime in that home that will be immediately negatively impacted in one fell swoop of an action that can't be undone. So I think that the last point I wanted to make is that the board has taken the time to go through and come up with options, and come up with an option that we obviously all vehemently disagree with. But it has been an option. And I think that when you look at it, it can seem like a difficult one. But I would argue that this is the easiest option. The easiest option is not to find a solution. It's not to sit down and work with the numbers. It's not to engage with the community. It's to just close, make the numbers work on paper, and kick the can to someone else to figure out. And this did not appear yesterday. It didn't appear last year. This has been years in the making of willful looking the other direction. It's the kindest way I can put it. And so there is a solution here that will keep the schools open for next year. There is a lot of hard work that's going to come after that. You have a fervent group of people that are happy to help you in any way possible. And this impacts everyone that sends kids to those schools, to any school in the district, and to anyone that doesn't have a kid in the district. And so I implore you to make the numbers work for April 30th, be engaged with us, and find a long-term structural solution to a problem or the proper sit-down of options before 3 weeks ago. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tara Cregan. I'm a parent of 2 students at New Monmouth. So we have the New Monmouth, Port Monmouth community. I spoke at the last session, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but I do just want to point something out. The anger that you saw last week was twofold. There was a lack of transparency. We were blindsided, okay? And when you start screwing with kids, Mama Bear comes out, and the anger happens, okay? But the other thing was the disingenuous nature of the numbers that we were seeing. We have children in these schools. We know the stories that they come home and tell us. So to tell us that our schools are not at capacity and we're so far under capacity that our middle schools can be split into 2 middle schools, the math wasn't mathing. So you got a community. You've enraged the community enough to look at your work, to go through the numbers that we have thus far, and put together more than what was in your proposal. 1 week of volunteers, okay? And we don't even have access to everything that you have. You know that an Oprah request has been filed, and we're gonna ask that you comply with that Oprah request. Don't extend the extension, don't ask for an extension on it. Open your books, open the contracts. Let's see if we have all the grants. Do we get grants for ADS? Do we get any grants for Title I schools? Right now, the way you're doing it, you have all the Title I schools merging into 1 middle school. What is that? I mean, you want to talk about some illegalities. I mean, maybe that's why Bruce isn't here. You know, and I would be remiss if I did not touch on the point that was in your communication today, Dr. Alphone. I spoke last time and I talked about the realities of what happened with New Monmouth and Port Monmouth merged and the overcrowded classrooms that we have. And your response was one of the frequently asked questions, does New Monmouth have an art room? Yes, New Monmouth has an art room. Asterisk. You know, does Sammy Sosa have the home runs? Asterisk, right? Last year, in 3rd grade, a decision was made to take the 3rd grade students going into 4th grade and bump them down from 4 classes to 3 classes. Okay? The same is done with 5th grade. The 5th grade are now moving out. The classes that we have below us have too many kids to then split into 3 classes. So right now, what you have is, when we talk about a Band-Aid, is an art room made out of what should be the 4th grade class. My daughter, who is in 4th grade, let me explain what her day is, just so we have an understanding of what your not at capacity means. She goes to class in the morning. She's split between 3 teachers. 3 teachers have every student in that 4th grade, as well as the 5th grade teachers have every student in that 5th grade. So she gets in the morning, she has a homeroom just so that she's accounted for that day. And then she splits her day into thirds, right? 1/3 between all the teachers. And to do that, she takes her backpack, her lunchbox, her clarinet, her coat, her hat, and her gloves to each and every classroom that she has to go to, as do the other 80 kids in her grade, because they are dismissed to lunch from one room, they are dismissed to recess from a different room, and there is a dismissal from the 3rd room. So what you have is a bunch of 9-year-old pack rats, hoping to God that they're not losing anything, which they are. They're losing anything during the day. So if that is what efficiency looks like in a merger of a school, then that's unfortunate and that's scary, and the research hasn't been done. Now, what you have in front of you are real numbers. So what I'm asking from you is either vote amongst yourselves, make a motion to open the finances, and let a small group of people that have been looking at these numbers evaluate them. Okay? Or what you're gonna have, and you know, if you want a little NDA there so we can go through it just to make this budget work, I'm sure everybody's okay with that. But what the other hand you're gonna have is everything coming to all of us pursuant to the Open Public Records Act and the common law right to access, and everything that has been done, every contract that you either did or didn't sign, every position of nepotism that you hired people for will be known, and it will be published, and it will be known to this entire community. So there are options. If this is what's done in a week of volunteers, of people that mainly don't know each other from both these different schools here, then think what the next, 6 months, 8 months could be, and you'll have a viable option. Thank you. Shutting Bayshore down is not an option. You have 2 schools, middle schools that are ready. Thorne and Thompson cannot take in any more kids. The square footage, when you want to consider the extra gym space in the auditorium, that's not actual space that should be considered. Okay, that's not the space that we're talking about. So, my suggestion, open the books, open the finances, let the people that did this, that which you didn't do for that salary, do the work for you, because they already have.
Hi, how are you? I could sit here and talk about my child who loves Bayshore School. My niece who goes to Bayshore School and is in the special needs program, and they don't have that special needs program at other schools. Bayshore School has a phenomenal special needs program. And to take her out of that would be detrimental to her. This is a child that needs consistency. This is a child that cannot take change, and you are throwing change at kids that cannot afford change. They're severely autistic or have other problems. I also can talk about putting elementary school kids in a middle school. I went to that middle school. My husband went to that middle school. My children have gone through that middle school. That middle school is not equipped for elementary school children. How will they go to the bathroom? How will they walk up the stairs with big gaps in them? How much is it going to cost to make that middle school appropriate and safe for elementary school children? How much budget do you have put aside for that? If you have budget put aside for that, and to build on to the middle schools, can we not use that money towards keeping our schools open for the next year until we figure out a better plan? And how come other schools have had similar situations where their schools have been in jeopardy in this area, and they were in jeopardy for many years? How are you not going to them and finding out what they did to keep their school going? They are a fountain of knowledge that you can use and find out what they did to keep their schools running and efficient. And I know that their financial situation is different and that they have different grants than we do, but are we using the grants? Have we used any grants or thought of any grants that we could use to help our schools? I have always told my children that honesty is the best policy, that lying and keeping things secret, and I have a hard time trusting you. Do not withhold the truth and lie to make yourself look better, because that is what you're doing. You are withholding the truth from every single parent in this school by last week just slipping in that this was going to happen when you knew for a long time that this was a possibility. So be open and honest with every single parent here, because they have good ideas. Do I have good ideas? I might not. But there's other schools that have been in this situation. Go to them. Find out what they did. I want to know as well, we have 5 principals in the high school? What is the need for 5 principals in a high school? I just want to know, there's not 5 principals. Now there's 5 principals. And as well as that one lady pointed out, where did we get the money for those scoreboards? Because I know how much those scoreboards cost, and we have 2 of them in. And the field was redone. If you knew that this was a possibility and that we were in dire trouble losing our schools, why are we spending money on ridiculous things like that? Why was it done last year? Why did I see those bags out there all last year and we're putting up new scoreboards that cost, how much did that all cost? We should be in the know of how much that all cost and how much money we could have saved to save our schools instead of putting that in. Who made that decision? Who made that decision? We need to keep these schools open so our kids aren't crowded in these schools. And they're building more houses. They're selling more houses. There's going to be families in there. Oh, of course there's going to be families in there. You say, oh no, there won't be families in the condos that they're building. There are going to be families in there. There's going to be more kids into the schools. So you need to think about that as well.
Hi, my name is Sue Griffin. I'm the mother of 4. I'm a former board member. My kids have graduated from the Middletown schools. They've grown into fantastic people, partially thanks to the Middletown schools and everything that you guys have done for them. So thank you very much for helping me to raise wonderful people. I want to thank the administration and the Board of Ed. I know your jobs are not easy. And I also want to thank everybody who's here because you have advocated for your school in such a beautiful way. So thank you for that. I have a question that you may or may not be able to answer for me tonight, and then I have some comments. The Port Monmouth sale, the $2.5 million for the Port Monmouth sale, has that money actually hit our books?
It's so here.
Okay, that's one thing that I think the community deserves an answer to. If it has hit our books, could you please tell us when it hit? And if it hasn't hit our books, if there's anything that we can do to help you to get that money from the county, we'd be more than willing to do that for you. So please involve us in that. My second thing is the budget presentation tonight is very nice and very, very thorough. I appreciate that. But the 10.1% was not in that. I did have many questions as to what that would actually look like. If you could include that in the next presentation, that would be really helpful for us so that we could see what exactly is involved with that. My third thing was I would implore you in the future to utilize budget ad hoc, facilities ad hoc, PIP. Bring the community into your process earlier so that we can be a part of helping you and understanding what you need from us. We're a part of selling buy-in in the community so that any problems that you have, we can be a part of. And we understand the process earlier, understand the deficits that you have, and we can understand what you need from us earlier. That would definitely help and would avoid a lot of the problems that we've had here. And my fourth and final comment is please find a way to involve those of us who don't have children in school anymore, so that we can get the messages that you're sending out from the central office whether you post them on the front page of your, however you do it, please get them to us so that we can have them as soon as everybody else does also. Okay? That's it, and thank you for everything.
So, in conclusion, I kind of like to end every meeting with next steps, and I think our intention of this was to come here and to show that we're willing to work together, we're willing to work with you. You've kind of seen that we've been a little busy. And I would just say that when you leave here, once you get the inkling that Plan A is dead, can you just please let us know, because we're holding our breath. And I don't know how many more days you can handle the stress, so even if you don't have the answer, we know the answer is a Band-Aid, we know we're gonna be working on this for a long time, and we're here for you. We're here for each other. And we see the people who do not have children in the schools. We see you. I know that you see this and you think, you know, all you care about is the schools because of your kids. We have parents, we have grandparents, we see you. We know the solution is not to have you pay for it. So I would just say that my eyes are opened a little bit more that maybe we need a couple representatives in our organization that don't have children in schools. I don't know if we do, but we can check. So I'm just begging you to please just let us know when the option to close any school is off the table. We would just feel like we could breathe, even if you don't know the answer. And I know that it's gonna take a little bit of time because we've asked you to think more and take some time. So if you could get back to us as soon as possible with that. I know we have more meetings and more forums, but we're open to communication. So whenever you wanna let us know, we would just love that. Thank you. And just thank you to everyone who has come out. People have said, we've come together as a town. This is not normal for us, and I don't think we'll ever go back. We have friends now that, like, honestly, I was calling people, I'm like, I don't know, that guy sounded amazing, I'm gonna call him. We're all working together on groups, we're having like gatherings, and I don't know, there's a little bit of a silver lining to all of this, and I think this is a movement. That's it, it's true. So thank you to everybody who's been helping out, and we'll see you soon.